Hello, Movie Club Strikes Back. This is exciting. The first video for Movie Club Strikes Back. It's very exciting. And this week's video, the first pick for Movie Club Strikes Back is from Adam, who was one of the original creators of We Are Movie Club and now one of the primary creators of Movie Club Strikes Back. Junk Drawer Videos. His link is obviously on screen, so click on that and watch his review because it's going to be awesome and probably much more awesome than mine's going to be. And his pick was PontyPool, and it's a Canadian horror film, psychological thriller about not quite zombies. And my cooker review for this is it kind of creeped me out quite a lot, and I'm probably going to have somewhat difficulty sleeping tonight. Which is odd because when I looked at some other reviews online, it said that it was witty and humorous. I didn't really feel like that so much. I mainly just felt really creeped out. And I think part of that is because a lot of the concepts within this film, particularly the way that this virus spreads, is really interesting and a bit of a mindfuck. It's such a weird idea that this virus travels through something non-physical and then gets kind of absorbed into the body in a mental process and then becomes something physical. And it's such a weird idea. It always feels like it doesn't belong in this world. And it's really hard to wrap my head around it. That being said though, there are a lot of really interesting sort of implications in terms of linguistics, which I really liked. There's the Jean Atkinson's theory of linguistics, which is to do with there is actually a theory that she has which is called the infectious disease assumption, which is where you learn language and you learn bad habits from people around you, and it's kind of like a form of semantic convergence where if you're talking to someone who has a different dialect or has different you know, just word usage, and you'll find yourself adjusting to their behaviour in order to fit into the social group. And there's also, of course, semantic divergence where you're talking to people with a different group and you get more and more far away from them in order to up your prestige. But in this case, it feels very interesting that there's sort of contagious language. And there's a couple of other theories that come into this. Particularly like the idea of all these different sort of mental effects of losing language, particularly with cases of aphasia, where usually caused by some sort of brain trauma, like a stroke or a head injury, where either you are unable to produce language, you can form language perfectly in your mind, but you can't produce it, whether that's physical or psychological, or when you can produce language perfectly well, but your brain can't process the information that you're given. And so the fact that there's a sort of weird sense of reality to this disease, and it's also very relevant to people who have things like Alzheimer's, where they're so unable to communicate that they turn to high emotions and sometimes violence. And so I think, even though this is kind of a little bit more zombie-esque in terms of the speed at which this virus affects them, it's something very grounded in reality, in the fact that if you were in a situation where you can't communicate, where you've lost the ability, you've got the tip of the tongue sort of feeling, and you can't form a sentence and you can't communicate, and it's very sudden, it's very scary, where do you go from there? And in this there's a couple of stages to this disease. It starts with a sort of loop, which they explain as a sort of like antibody response, where it starts off as you can't form this word, and then you repeat this word over and over again, trying to not comprehend the meaning, trying to get to that point where you've said a word so many times that it loses its meaning, and that's sort of like your antibody response. And then it goes into this very violent, scared place, and it extends quite a lot more than perhaps is necessary, but it does have this sort of creepy grounding, and it's what makes a lot of horror films particularly scary is sound design. And this has some really interesting sound design points, particularly a lot of ways that the sound travels and attracts things, the way that communication happens. and it's one of those things that makes Dead Silence, which is a horror film that I haven't seen, but I watched over my sister's shoulder a couple of clips, watched the trailer and read the Wikipedia article and had nightmares for at least a few days. And Hush, the episode of Buffy where they're unable to communicate because they're all silent. And it's very, very scary, the concept that communicating, which is your natural response when you're scared, is to talk to someone, to work out a plan, and when communication is the enemy or is impossible, that's truly terrifying. So yeah, this film kind of freaked me out. The direction is pretty well done. You can tell it's a low budget film in that there's one main set and one outside set, and that's pretty much it. There's also a very limited number of actors. I think there's 3 primary actors that you actually get to talk to. There's one who is on screen, well, off screen the entire time, but is a character in his own right, and then there's maybe 5 other faces that you see, and the rest is all voices over the radio and stuff like that. So you get this very secluded, close-knit group that you are rooting for, and so you kind of have to get to know your heroes. I think the main guy, I can't remember what his first name is, but his second name is McCarthy, which I think is a beautiful name. He does a really good job. He's got a very epic voice. He's able to do a very subtle difference between his natural voice and his radio voice. So you get this sort of two-way character going on, which I really liked. I mean, I didn't particularly like his character personally, but I like his performance and the fact that you really get to see the progression of his character from this very in control angry person to a very scared angry person. And yeah, I really like that. From a production standpoint, again, it's low budget, but definitely some of the zombie stuff is really creepy. Like when her mouth goes a little bit just off, it's gonna give me bad dreams. The sound design is amazing. All of the really careful, the fact that you've got to watch the credits in order to find out what happens. It's got the snippets going over the top. It's really, really well done. There's some really interesting ideas in this. That being said, it's definitely a little bit slow towards the beginning. I think if you watch this again, then there will be some nice little clues as to what's going on, because the dialogue is so intrinsic to the story. But I don't think I'm going to watch this again because it freaked me out too much. Anyway, I think I've said everything. I hope I haven't rambled on for too long. Thank you so much for the pick, Adam. Hello, Movie Club. Movie Club Strikes Back. I'm so going to get that confused again, and I'm sorry, but yay! New exciting projects. Yeah. Comment, follow hashtag, look at Adam's video. I don't know who's picking next, but they are on screen and they are amazing as well. And I will see you guys all in the Hangout / next week. I hope you enjoy. Bye guys.